Welcome, Wargamers, to the fungal dank caves of the mortal realms, because today we are taking a story, oddly enough, straight out of the Daughters of Khaine battle tome, rather than the Gloomspite Gitz. It's a great story. I'm excited to share it with you. Right before we jump in, I just want to throw this out there. A huge thank you to all of my incredible patrons over on Patreon. You guys make this channel super possible, and I appreciate it. I'm trying to be more active there. I was always so worried about doing, walled off content. But honestly, I'm going to start using it as my main hobby posting outlet. So if you want to see what I'm working on and all that kind of stuff, go ahead, head over to Patreon. It would mean the world to me, and it keeps me, my wife, our cat, this channel, all of it going. It's super supportive. Thank you guys so much. Link to that in the description down below. Now, today's story is called Fungal Lunatics. And again, it comes out of the Daughters of Khaine battle tome. Seeking to spread the filth of the clammy dank across the Umbral Vale, an infestation of Gloomspite Gitz, led by the legendarily repugnant madcap shaman Nitbug Dribble Snot, surges out of the Inkspoil mines. This green tide swarms across the darksome valleys of Va-Leth, leaving forests of poison-spewing mushrooms in its wake. Cackling away on a red-spotted fungal throne at the heart of this squelchy and mildew-ridden kingdom, Dribble Snot takes to calling himself the new, quote, Loon King, unquote. His ambitions are shattered by a war coven from Kalebraun, who utilize cunning illusions to slip past hordes of Moonclan grots and into the shaman's war camp. After a brief but ferocious skirmish with Dribble Snot's cadre of rabid fanatics, the Khainites nail the crystallized form of the would-be Loon King to his own fungal shrine, frozen forever in the grip of unimaginable agony. Okay, friends, this is an awesome story. One, you just don't see a lot of Gloomspite Gitz versus Daughters of Khaine stuff, and I appreciate it. I actually know where this region is, one of the few times in these stories that we actually have a map location. Now, the specifics of the mine itself are not given, like the actual literal location, but there is a mountain range right there, so I imagine it's in there somewhere. And so let's start this discussion by breaking down what we see from the Gloomspite Gitz side. First of all, can we just all really appreciate me for the sentence that I dropped regarding madcap shaman Nidbug Dribble Snot? And he is known as legendarily repugnant, which, I can relate. Now, what's interesting to me is that we don't actually have a plan here. Like, we know that he got together a giant Gloomspite Gitz army and they're marching out, but we don't really know where or why. My assumption, just based on what we know about the faction, is, if he's calling himself the new Loon King, I think we can make a guesstimation that he has told them the bad moon is going to show up XY place. Of course, that's an assumption, but all we know is that he mobilized this massive army to go somewhere, and they're tearing through the realm of shadows, Ulgu, which is not a smart move for a large army, to be honest with you. But as they're going, they are poisoning the area around them, essentially using their version of biological weapons, which is just dropping mushrooms everywhere, and it's just this incredibly consumptive substance that is poisonous, obviously, to anyone who tries to interact with it, but is meant to grow rapidly. And so as they're going, they're basically just war bombing everything behind them. Now, interesting thing about Va-Leth, of course, like I said, we do not get any kind of glimpses to where this specific mine is. But if you look at the south end of the island, you see there is a city called Drukazur. And my assumption, which I think is completely reasonable, that this is a Daughter of Khaine settlement. Okay, that's basically what it says on the legend off to the side of this picture. And so my thought is they're probably walking somewhere towards the cities that exist here. I mean, I can't imagine where else they would be going. But to kind of put a thumbtack on the end of the Gloomspite Gitz series of things, large army, they're poisoning the area. This cannot stand in the heart of Morathi's home turf. Absolutely not. And so the forces of Kalebraun specifically are unleashed. Now, the reason I wanted to point out this map is not because Kalebraun has a fortress here. In fact, you see that they don't. Rather, one of the things that makes Kalebraun unique is that they kind of are nomadic. They use the temples of other Daughters of Khaine as their hotspots where they can recoup, basically restore themselves, rearm themselves, and then go back out. So based on this, my general assumption is the Gloomspite Gitz were going out to try and poison stuff and maybe even follow a bad moon. And as they're tearing up Valeth, the Kalebraun temple that happens to be basically just sticking out and hanging out with the Druka Zur city, says no, and they march out to go take care of them. Now, there are some other really cool things when it comes to the Kalebraun. It's not just that they're nomadic. They serve a very special function within the Daughters of Khaine army. They are a particular temple or sub-faction of Daughters of Khaine, so when you talk broadly speaking, like all the doc, I'm just going to shorten it that way to have one syllable. All the doc stuff has, the same basic stuff where they all have witch elves, they all have Sisters of Slaughter, they all have access to snake ladies, whether they're rocking bows, spears, doesn't really matter. But the thing that makes the Kalebraun unique is that they have been given a very special role by Morathi herself. You see, whenever a temple either rebels, revolts, or there's just too many questions being asked and Morathi herself needs someone or something dealt with, she turns to Kalebraun. They are essentially her personal enforcers. And I guess I should add personal executioners as well, to the point where Morathi taught their temple shadow magics, like, personally. It wasn't just a school of thought that other, temples would have had. This is rather like, I'm going to teach you how to be the best at this. And so what you essentially get is a whole army of, Daughters of Khaine who are already on the brink of murderous at the best of times, who are able to act independently of their other sisters because they're not trying to hold any territory, right? They're just out and abroad. They do have a super secret base, but nobody knows where it is. They just keep using the temples of other Daughters of Khaine. So you have this revolving door of warriors that are personally aligned with Morathi to the point where they would kill other temples if required to, or if one, hag queen or something like that started asking too many questions or getting in the way, building too much of a following of their own, Morathi just takes care of it. And so why is this story cool? Well, essentially you get this great snapshot of a massively overinflated ego in the Gloomspite Gitz leader being like, I can do anything that I want, and starts just happily marching out, not realizing that he is walking in Morathi's backyard. And at this point, she's ascended to godhood, so she's like, no. This is pest control. This is not like two armies clashing. And so, because she thinks so little of them, doesn't send the big marching, flanking army of Daughters of Khaine, but rather her personal secret assassins, because all you have to do with some of these, green-skinned factions typically, because the ogres will keep fighting, but orcs and goblins specifically, if you shatter the leadership, it all falls apart. And again, it's pest control. Who cares if they live in the mountains? Just don't go around killing my forests. So she dispatches her bikini-clad ninjas, which, is a way to handle your problems. Not my choice, but it's an option. Who, using the shadow magics that a deity-level character taught them, infiltrate the entire thing. And if you're kind of curious as to why he got turned into diamonds or whatever, that is an effect of the weapons that the snake ladies use, both the archer and spear variant. All of their weapons and their abilities lead to being able to basically crystallize people in place. Now, you're not dead. You have a sensation. It's like all your nerves are being fired at once. But you stand there as a statue, because it's like a Medusa motif type thing. You stand there like a statue, frozen in diamonds, and you just have to look upon in horror of all the things happening to you. It seems like a really stinking terrible fate. And I think to make sure that the point is driven home that this is not tolerated in Morathi's, backyard, they pin him to the throne and just leave him. Like, they didn't need to take on the army. They just needed them to find this. That's going to break them enough. And you know what? It's probably right. And so, yeah, as I kind of think about the things, it's a short story, it's very simple. It's just a Gloomspite Gitz army thought they were on top of the world, and then a small detachment of Kalebraun went out and just said, nah. I mean, that's really all it is. But it's exactly how the Daughters of Khaine deal with their problems, and I like that it's in their battle tome to highlight it. They see a problem. What's that? There's someone in our backyard who thinks that they are uppity. I'm just going to go deal with it. I'm not going to give you the pomp and circumstance of a whole battle and all these This is not about a fight to the death. This is just your death. No show, no circumstance or pomp. Just go in there, nip it in the bud, and get out. And honestly, my last point was one of the first things I said in this video is just these two factions never show up together. And I like that there are these stories that connect just random combinations of things in battle tomes, because so many times we're like, why would these two armies fight? And giving us lots and lots of context for that. Now, you don't have to play this story if you're playing a game, but it's nice to see the representation of that any army can fight any other army. Plus, any single time a Gloomspite Gitz hero, in this case a shaman, thinks that they are like the end-all be-all, I'm the next Loon King, all this kind of stuff, and to watch them get punked is just good entertainment. That's just a fact. So I enjoyed it thoroughly. Let me know your thoughts, y'all. What did you like about this story? For me personally, it was a good opportunity to relearn about the Kalebraun because I had forgotten about them. I mean, I knew that they existed and their name was like recognizable to me, but I forgot about their ties directly to Morathi as her personal, executioners, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word. I think what's crucial is that they do not have autonomy to enact Morathi's will that it's mentioned. At least I couldn't find a reference to it because that would essentially make them a Daughters of Khaine internal inquisition, if they could just dispense Morathi's justice and assess for themselves who's having too many thoughts or complaints or whatever. But I think it's very much on the rails. She wants them to be following her orders, which is fair. Let me know your thoughts in the description down below. I would love to hear them, and I'll catch you next time in my next Age of Sigmar video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.